Said thank you for being here and rearranging your busy schedules. I want to first start off by introducing our board members who are present. We have our board vice president, Ms. Mary Boehm, and she's going to talk to you a little bit and she doesn't know that, but I put her on the spot. We have Mr. Sullivan, board member, and then Mrs. Collins, board member. And I also want to recognize all of our principals and our instructional superintendents here today because they are the ones who are on the ground to make this work happen. I have a few pre-prepared remarks, but I kind of want to give you an idea of the flow of the press conference today. I'll open up with these prepared remarks, and bear with me as we go through those. And then we'll have our board vice president to come up and share a little bit about the progress that we've made in Birmingham City Schools as it relates to standardized testing with the ACAP. And then we have our amazing principals here, and we have a couple of principals that's going to share let me go back. We have our academic officer here who's going to talk about in detail around some of the trends that we see in the data that we're very proud of. And then we're going to have a couple of our amazing principals share some of the work that they're doing in their schools. And we've saw some significant increases in all of our schools, but particularly those schools that we're going to highlight. So let me get to the prepared remarks. A few weeks ago, the State Department of Education, they released the initial reports for the spring assessment. Students in grades K through 8, which you already know, they take the ACAP assessment, and they took it last spring. This test gives us a snapshot of the academic performance of our schools, and it also helps us to improve instruction in our classrooms. This morning, I want to take a few minutes to highlight some things from this report. Most of our scholars and individual schools in grade through 8 made some significant strides. This success is extremely pleasing to us, particularly because of the last 2 years with the pandemic. We saw some significant learning loss as it relates to students either being virtual, being hybrid, and even as students came back and they had to quarantine for 14 days initially. So we're pleased with the success that we've seen in our schools. The success in our schools is due to the educators in the city of Birmingham who make the difference in the classrooms every single day. It starts with our teachers. We know that our families have worked hard, our students have worked hard, and our data shows that we are improving. I want to be clear also, we own our data. We own it. We are the educators. We are the professional teachers, principals, administrators. So we know that even though we've made some successes, we have a long way to go, and we own that. But I know also that many of you are familiar with the way standardized testing works. There are 4 levels in testing with the ACAP. There's a level 4 and a level 3, and that means that students are either above grade level or they're on grade level. There's level 2, meaning that they're approaching grade level, and then there's level 1 that students are not on grade level. So I'm going to share a little bit of data, the highlights around what we saw, and as I mentioned earlier, we have Dr. Dawson who's going to provide some more context. I see our board president in the back, and Ms. Boehm, I think you are off the hook. Mr. Meadows, if you would come up and join us. Mr. Meadows is our board president. So last year, in English and language arts, which reading is included as part of that, the percentage of our students who scored above grade level, and that's a level 3 or 4, increased by 7 percentage points. At the same time, the students who are in grades level 2 and level 1 decreased. But let me tell you what that means. The state of Alabama only increased 2 percentage points. We in the city of Birmingham increased 7 percentage points. In reading and math, we saw some similar increases. We had a 5% increase in the level of 3s and level 4s. And what's most significant, the lowest level is level 1. We saw a 10% decrease in the number of students who tested in the level 1. We recognize that, and I said this before, that we have a lot of work to do in the city of Birmingham, and we are not satisfied with that. But what I will say is this. Before the pandemic, the majority of our students in grades 3 scored below grade level in reading. We have the majority of our third graders now outperforming not only where we did during the pandemic, but before the pandemic. The majority of our third graders are reading above grade level. We're not satisfied with that until all of our students are above grade level, but I think it's time for us to take a moment with all of the work of the individuals that are standing here and those who could not come today because they're in their schools. They worked hard in order to ensure that this was successful. Our academic officer, I cannot say enough about the plan that Dr. Dawson put in place. You know, as a superintendent, you set the vision. You say this is what we want to happen, and then you hire some amazing, outstanding people to make that vision a reality. So Dr. Dawson is going to come up and discuss the plans that we put in place to ensure that our students are successful. Hey, how are you? Ensure our students are successful. But first, I want to bring up our school board president. You know, as I indicated, that the work that happens to improve achievement happens in the schools. But we have to have a school board who is bold, who has a vision, who ensures that we put the resources in place to ensure that all of our students are successful. So at this time, I'm going to ask our school board president, Mr. Meadows, if he would come up and say a few words. And then after Mr. Meadows, we'll have Dr. Dawson, who is our academic officer. Ms. Meadows.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Again, I apologize to everybody for my tardiness. Had to maintain 2-year-old twins this morning. But I want to start by saying kudos to our superintendent, Dr. Sullivan. You know, we are in our first year as a new board. We're coming up on our first year annually as this school board sitting in place. And so Dr. Sullivan, you know, from day one has been working vigorously. I didn't know Dr. Sullivan then. You know, people ask, but I would say, honestly, getting to know him, seeing his work, his passion, his heart for our students, being a son of Birmingham, a son of Birmingham City Schools. You know, I'm often worried about him. You know, he's consumed with this work. You know, he eats it, he lives it, he breathes it, and he means everything that he says. And I'm not a person of fluff, but I say that sincerely, and I'm proud to work with you, Doc. I also want to do something that probably most people would not expect, but I want to give a shout out to our previous board who served before us. They began this work. We were not in place at the beginning of last school year. And so they did some good things. One thing they did was they hired Dr. Sullivan, and they supported him up until the point that they were no longer in office. So I always want to give credit where credit is due, but I want to give credit to them for, you know, giving us a good superintendent with the plan and the vision. Lastly, I want to say thank you to my colleagues on the board. We have some senior board members who came in with tenure. You know, we have board member Boehm here, who serves as our vice president, who has been a part of the board and came in and, you know, helped us newbies along the way, who came in with passion and heart. You know, we were out on the campaign trail because we wanted to make a difference for our students and our children. And so I want to give a shout out to Ms. Boehm, shout out to board member Smith and board member Collins. We wouldn't be where we are today without their senior leadership, and board member Wilson. Lastly, to my other colleagues who we all came in together, we couldn't be more proud. Last thing I'll say, I'm a preacher, so I close 3 times. The last thing I'll say is, Dr. Sullivan said it, we are not where we want to be, but we have to celebrate small wins, and we have to celebrate all wins. Let me say that again. We have to celebrate small wins, and we have to celebrate all wins. We have to say that to our students, who every day, if they make a small win, we need to celebrate that. We need to celebrate all wins because we know where the goal is, and I'm 100% confident that if you continue to pray for us, pray for our leaders, pray for our principals, we couldn't do it without them. They are some awesome people. Pray for our teachers and our school district. And I want to say thank you to everybody, Dr. Dawson, all the way down, our instructional leaders. We love you guys. We're praying for you, and we couldn't be more proud of the success that we're having right now. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Dawson.
Good morning. There's a saying that says, write the vision and make it plain so that those who read it can run with it. And so we're very thankful for the vision that our superintendent, Dr. Sullivan, has set. What you're hearing today is a result of his vision for the work in Birmingham City Schools. Coming on board, he asked and set a mandate that we raise the level of achievement for all of our students, and that is the work that we've set out to do. But before we even go even further about the work that we're doing, I just want to personally quickly thank a few people, one being our instructional superintendents that are standing here today, Dr. Willis and Dr. Gwen Tillman, Ms. Constance Burns, our instructional superintendents, these wonderful principals, and those who serve on the academic team, Dr. Pamela Williams, Dr. Chapman, and all of those who have worked to make this happen. So what is this means for our data extensively, and what are we doing to address it? Beyond the data that Dr. Sullivan has shared with you, there are some other pieces of that that we would like to quickly highlight in the area also. He mentioned about proficiency, but also in the area of growth, because we know in Birmingham City Schools that we can't move from level 1 to proficiency without going through growth. And so if for us in Birmingham City Schools, for our mathematics, for the number of students, as Dr. Sullivan talked about, that were moved out of level 1, that means those students had to move to another category. And we're happy to report in Birmingham City Schools for mathematics, over 37% of all of our students who took the test who had a growth score scored at the highest level of growth in mathematics. That's over a third of all of our students who showed significant gains at the highest level. And then also in literacy, 41% of those students were at the highest level of growth. And that says there's almost 50% of all of our students who sat for a test showed significant gains at the highest level. So what are some things that we put in place to make that happen, as Dr. Sullivan has asked? One of the things we did was we did a deep dive analysis around our instructional delivery. We changed our instructional flow to create instructional frameworks for every subject: literacy, math, science, social studies, to health, science, PE, and every subject in between. That every teacher will have a common language around what instruction and high quality instruction looks like, sound like, and feel like for every student, bell to bell. Dr. Sullivan has set a vision that we want to have high quality instruction in every school, in every classroom, for every student, every day. And we're doing that through our 6 T's. The 6 T's is our approach to instruction. And what it says is that in our professional learning communities, that's where teachers come together and they plan about the best ways to instruct kids when they go live in instruction. They are to ask themselves these 6 questions. What is the learning target? What are going to be my instructional teaching moves? What texts or resources I'm going to be using? What tasks or activities are we going to be having the students to do? What talk or accountable talk or in level of engagement are we hearing from the students? And then lastly, what type of test or checks for understanding are we going to infuse in our instruction to make sure that before we leave this lesson today, that all students are understanding what is asked of them? And so today we have 2 schools that we would like to highlight today that are here today. Just want to give you just a quick overview of their data to share with you. The first one will be Southampton Elementary K-8 school. They had an increase of level 3 and level 4 students in ELA, 11, almost 12% increase in the number of students proficient in ELA. And in mathematics, they had almost an 8% increase in mathematics. And then the second school that will come will be Dr. Love, and that was Dr. Washington, the principal of Southampton K-8 school. And the last one would be Dr. Melvin Love from Oxmoor Valley Elementary School, who had a level a 9, almost a 10% increase of students at the level of proficiency in ELA. And a 10% increase in the students at level proficiency in mathematics. And the last note for both of those schools, at Southampton, the number of students decreasing at level 1, which is the lowest level of achievement, those students who are not proficient. Southampton had a 17% decrease in the number of students not on grade level in mathematics, and a 10% increase in the number of students, decrease in the number of students not on grade level in ELA. And then for Oxmoor Valley, they had a 10% decrease in the number of students not on grade level in ELA. And watch this, a 29% decrease in the number of students that were not on grade level in mathematics. So with that, we're going to ask Dr. Washington to come and Dr. Love.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Dr. Dawson. I'm Dr. Alicia Washington, principal at Southampton, and the past year at Southampton, I call it the Big Five. What led to our success were small explicit group instruction, differentiated instruction, along with high-quality professional development for the teachers, along with weekly PLCs. Last but not least, the gradual release model, which is a part of our BCS frameworks, also led to a tremendous amount of success for our scholars. Dr. Love?
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Also to Dr. Dawson, our academic director. It is indeed a pleasure to stand here this morning to tell you about the success of the students at Oxmoor Valley. But I'd be remiss if I did not stand here and say that it was all the teachers doing. I just led the work. But in that spot, we made sure that we individualized, instruction for all students. We looked at the data, we looked at our already test scores, we celebrated those gains. We also looked at the data as a whole, and we really dived in on third grade and gave that intentional support to third grade with the human capital in the building with tutors, bringing those tutors in to make sure that we are addressing the students' needs. We just kept data in front of us. We made sure that instruction was our #1 priority because we know during that time we were in the midst of COVID. And so we really harnessed in on what the data was telling us. Already was really the framework, of course, and the district priorities were as well. And we made sure that we addressed those students' concerns as it related to what the data was telling us in reading. We used the framework, and we lived by the framework at Oxmoor Valley each and every day. And we are excited about our gains. And thank you.
So at this time, I'm sure you have some questions. We have one of my board members here, Mr. Collins, and he says that there's a new day in Birmingham. And I think that there is a new day in Birmingham. We are strong financially. We are strong academically. We are moving in the right direction in Birmingham City School. And our goal is that we're your first choice in education. So at this time, I'm going to open it up for questions that you might have. I know you got one.
Dr. Sullivan, can you talk about just the role of the parents in this matter, bridging the relationships between the classroom, the teachers themselves, the administration, and the parents at home?
So I would say this, any successful school has a strong parent and school relationship. You know, the first teacher that a child receives or a child has is their parents. And particularly around reading. Reading is a skill. I mean, it's just like any other skill. When you're, you play sports. If you're a basketball player and you go home and your dad is sitting with you and you're shooting jump shots, you're building that skill. And that's the same thing with reading. So parents are paramount in going home and 15 minutes a day, just like you're practicing that skill in sports, you practice that reading skill, you practice mathematics. Making sure that our parents feel welcome when they come to school, come to our buildings, because they are the ones that really reinforce the work that's done at the school. So the parent relationship is vital. We have really worked very strongly with our parent involvement department under Mrs. Douglas to provide trainings for our parents. One on technology, because a lot of the technology was not innate to parents. Kids knew it, but parents and grandparents did not. And making sure that they were aware of the curriculum that we had in the school, making sure they were aware of the resources that we had in the schools. Most recently, we had at the Boutwell, we had a partnership with the mayor's office where we invited parents and we provided books for parents to have at home. And we said 15 minutes a day, read 15 minutes a day. It makes a difference for the students. So parents are paramount in our success. So I think, making sure that parents are connected with their schools, teachers reaching out to parents, putting more, we have a huge communications department, making sure that parents have easy access to teachers, whether that be through email. I know a lot of times teachers are using what they call Classroom Dojo, group, I wouldn't say text, but social media that provides parents with insights of what's happening in the schools. PTA meetings, traditional. We do recognize that we work in a school district where, parents getting off at 5:30 in the afternoon and coming to a PTA meeting may not be a reality because many of our parents do shift work. And just because they don't show up at a PTA meeting doesn't mean that they're not involved. What we have to do as an organization is to try to find ways to meet parents where they are. And technology is a wonderful way to do that through Zoom meetings, through, we have a program called Nearpod where we can upload different lessons, and the parents can go back and watch that. So we're trying to make sure that we meet parents where they are instead of trying to have parents meet us where we are. Yes, ma'am.
We know that the pandemic, like you said, was hard for teachers and administrators, but I know there were probably days where everyone was like, how are we going to keep going? How are we going to get through this? But now to not only get through it, but see success out of it, how does that feel?
So it feels amazing. I have worked in Birmingham City Schools for nearly 30 years, and Birmingham has had some real success. But there's a perception in Birmingham that our schools are not high quality, that our our teachers, perceptions about our teachers, perceptions about our schools. But that's not the reality. What I see when I go in schools every single day are people who are working very hard with our students. I see bright and amazing students, and I think that this just indicates the hard work that our students are doing and our parents are doing. I would say this, as we came out of the pandemic, we had to put some things in place to ensure that our children were successful. One of the things that we did was we redid our schedule, our school calendar. You probably heard about that. You know, it went over well with some, not so much with others. But one of the things that we recognize, and Dr. Dawson touched on this, is that when our students are with us, they learn. Our growth in Birmingham has traditionally been through the roof. So that tells us that when kids are in classes, they learn. So our goal is to provide students with more opportunities academically. We talk about a school year, but when you actually cost it out or you map it out, a school year is only 180 days. You have 180 days to bring students, keep students on grade level and move them up, or bring students who are not on grade level up to grade level. So 180 days for some students may not be enough. So what we did was we put intercession periods in. So we had 9 weeks of instruction, and we had a week of intercession. Intercession is an opportunity for students who to learn beyond the regular school day. So we had remediation, we had interventions, we had enrichment for students. So we wanted to find something that all students were involved in. At the last intercession, we had over 5,000 students who participated. That's about a fourth of our total student population. That's a lot of students to be in school when they don't have to be. We also had some really robust summer programming. I mean, we had coding, we had Lego, but we also had enrichment activities, and we did have remediation for students who did not pass the grade level. And then we partnered with 6 of our local universities to provide high-dose tutoring for our students, and every one of our schools had a tutor involved. And then, as I indicated earlier, we partnered with the city through a program called Page Pals, where we have community volunteers go into libraries, go into schools, and they read to students. So all of this village approach to working with our students, I think that we're seeing some success as it relates to that. So we are very proud of the progress that we've made. But as I said before, we still have a long way to go. You know, even though the majority of our third graders are reading on grade level, we know next year they implement the Alabama literacy assessment. And so we know that means that if students are not reading on grade level, they may repeat. And so we don't want to have any student in the city of Birmingham not on grade level so that they have to repeat, because there's a huge body. And I know you guys are media people, you want to do some research. There's a huge body of research about the negative effects that retaining a child has on a child. You know, and so we don't want that to happen. We want to put everything in place to ensure that is not a reality in the city of Birmingham.
You said you have a long way to go still, so what's the plan for the next school year to make sure that the scores keep growing for the next school year?
So first, Tier 1 instruction, that is key. That's the first level of instruction that students receive. All students get Tier 1 instruction, and Dr. Dawson kind of touched on the instructional frameworks tied to Tier 1 instruction. But also important to that is the Tier 2 instruction. So when students are not successful with grade level material, how do you provide a scaffolding for them so that they can get to that level? So Tier 1 instruction, how do you respond to students when they're not being successful? You know, and bringing in partners and support staff. You know, we're lucky in Birmingham. We have a ton of partners who are working with us, who are willing to provide some additional supports, because we know that, you know, the 7.5 hours, 6.5 hours that we have students during the school day is not enough when students have significant issues. We also recognize that our kids come to us with a lot of social issues that we have to provide wraparound services for. We have Mrs. Burns here. She's over our student support department. So we have social workers, we have counselors, we have psychologists to support students beyond just what happens in schools. And then we're expanding, putting clinics in our schools. So we want to make sure that there's no reason for a student not to have what they need in order to be successful. Any other questions? Go ahead.
In these frameworks, are there particular areas you think that were reworked that really needed addressing, that were able to, like, what were the primary things that were changed that really helped student achievement?
So I think changing the focus from having a remediation focus on schools, on students, and putting a focus on achievement. So for far too long, people assess students based on a belief that students needed to be remediated. So if you come into my classroom and I see you from a deficit mindset that you need to be remediated, you never get exposed to Tier 1 grade level instruction, but the test is on Tier 1 grade level instruction. So if I never expose you to that, then you're never prepared for that. And it has nothing to do with your academic ability. It has to do with my mindset and my perception of your academic ability. So what we have to do is standardize what Tier 1 instruction is. Everybody gets high-level instruction, right? And when students have a disconnect between the high-level instruction and their performance, then I move to the Tier 2 to support them, to get them to high-level instruction. So I think focusing on that, providing professional development with our teachers on how do we teach at that high level, how do we keep kids moving and progressing forward, I think that has been very beneficial. Students have to be exposed to what they're going to be assessed on. Anything else? Well, if not, we have some amazing principals that are here. We just highlighted two, but you've seen success in many of our schools. I'm sure that they'll be willing to have a conversation with you. I'm here, our academic officer, we have our instructional superintendents here, as well as members of our board. So I want to say thank you for coming out. The State Department of Education, they're going to release the test scores on Thursday as part of their state board meeting. We have a little snapshot that Mrs. Stewart has provided around Birmingham City Schools. Again, we have a long way to go. I don't want anybody to have any misconceptions about that, but I think that we've put the right conditions in place to ensure that our students are moving in the right direction and that we're going to have academic success moving forward. All right. Thank you. All right.
Good job, Doc.